Hi everyone, I am Daehyun Kim, and I will be sharing what I have been working on with Vidya Settler and Manisha Agrawala. This is a chart showing 30-year fixed mortgage rates with years on the x-axis. The chart has a visually prominent peak around 1981. The author may want to draw attention to this peak and write a caption like, "The 30-year fixed mortgage rate reached its peak of 18% in 1981. This caption refers to the most visually prominent peak, and we expect that people would focus on this peak based on the emphasis from both the chart and the caption and report takeaways related to this peak. Is this really the case? On the other hand, the author may want to point to this rise in the late 1990s, a far less visually prominent feature, and write, "The 30-year fixed mortgage rate increased slightly from 1997 and 1999. Would you rely more on the chart, and would your takeaways be about the most visually prominent peak? Or would you rely more on the caption, and would your takeaway be about the less visually prominent rise that the caption describes?" To confirm our intuitions and answer our questions around how charts and captions work together in forming a reader's takeaway, we ran a user study. In 43-line charts, which are common yet easily parameterizable and are thus useful for our initial exploration, we identified the top 3 visually prominent chart features and a non-prominent feature by crowdsourcing. Here, the red, green, and blue boxes indicate the top 3 visually prominent features in order, and the gray dot shows a non-prominent feature. Then for each of these features, we use templates for caption generation in order to minimize the effects of linguistic variation. Here, we fill in the domain, the feature, the start date, and the end date to obtain the caption, "Macron's approval rating steeply dropped between June and August of 2017. Here are our results. When the caption describes the most visually prominent chart feature, like in our initial example caption that describes the visually prominent peak, the takeaways tend to mention the feature doubly emphasized by the chart and its caption. So in our example, people tend to focus on the peak, which is both the most visually prominent and the feature described in the caption. On the contrary, when the caption does not describe the most prominent feature, as in our second caption describing the small increase, readers tend to rely more on the chart and will report takeaways based on the visually prominent chart features. In the example, people rely more on the chart and still focus on the visually prominent peak instead of the rise mentioned in the caption. This is a chart showing US president approval ratings in Europe since the Bush administration. The most prominent chart feature is around the Obama period, but the caption, "Biden receives much better ratings than Trump did," describes a rather less prominent spike at the right end. Our findings indicate that many readers would not take away the intended message in the caption and end up focusing on the visually prominent chart feature around the Obama period instead. For more efficient communication, the author should try to align the most visually prominent chart feature and the caption by methods such as using overlays or highlighting to boost the visual prominence of the chart features, or carefully selecting data ranges to display in the chart. Here the chart omits information not relevant to the caption and shows only the approval ratings since Trump. Within this new chart, the rise in ratings is the most visually prominent feature.